If you thought that in science fiction the love affair between two humans is the epitome of romance, you need to stay tuned for today's video, where we explore the boundaries of love being blurred by some unusual interspecies union in movies. In most of these instances, the dark nature of the monster momentarily disappears, and even if they are creatures that strike fear, their demeanor towards their love interest suggests otherwise. In this video, we will take a quick look at every major movie that highlights the unholy yet strangely erotic union of a human and a monster, and maybe we will just redefine love for you. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The Shape of Water, 2017. Guillermo del Toro never fails to surprise his audience with unique projects, and The Shape of Water is yet another remarkable movie that captures the strange relationship brewing between a creature and a human. The story is premised on the backdrop of the Cold War era, and Elisa, the protagonist of the movie, works in a high-security and top-secret government laboratory as a janitor. She is a bright young woman, but she is mute, and her disability robbed her of a few better opportunities. Her only friend is a fellow cleaner named Zelda, and her monotonous life changes when a new creature is introduced into the facility. The creature is amphibious and has both human and animalistic traits, and the government plans to experiment on the creature by sending it to space. As Elisa starts communicating with the creature, she develops feelings for him, feelings that might come in between her loyalty towards the authorities and her love life. It might come across as a pretty basic, linear romantic drama, but the narrative had some deeper elements that enabled it to win the Best Picture in the 2018 Oscars. This adult fairy tale is visually gorgeous, and at the heart of the movie is a touching love story. Sally Hawkins steals the show as Elisa, and her bond with the endangered creature offers a few memorable emotional moments. The haunting musical score by Alexandre Desplat is truly beautiful, and the mastery of storytelling from Guillermo del Toro makes for an engaging narrative. The humanoid amphibian looks quite believable, and the effects department deserves all the appreciation for the success. Watch for the shocking twist about Elisa, and the jaw-dropping climax of the movie will ensure that you remember it for a very long time. The Fly, 1986. Seth Brundle is a brilliant and eccentric scientist, and he has mastered the teleportation technology. He meets a journalist named Veronica and takes her to his apartment to show her the unique invention. However, the teleportation machine still hasn't been tested on living objects, and he is determined to make things work. Meanwhile, Seth and Veronica fall for each other, but their relationship has a cruel twist of fate. While experimenting on himself in the teleportation device, a fly enters the transmission booth, and Seth gets fused with the fly. He slowly starts to change and eventually turns into the monstrous creature Brundlefly. Does he have enough time to find a cure, or is his love story doomed for a tragic climax? David Cronenberg rarely goes wrong with creature horror flicks, and The Fly is another of his well-made and well-narrated projects, exploring body horror at its finest. Jeff Goldblum plays the role of Seth Brundle, and it is a horrifying journey as he steadily turns into a grotesque creature. The gross transformation is witnessed by his girlfriend, and the anguish and horror will reach you through this storytelling. Gina Davis is quite convincing as Veronica, and the roller coaster ride of emotions in the changing relationship is what separates this movie from a regular creature horror movie. The shocking ending is sure to break your heart, but The Fly also has a good way of teaching people how love doesn't change even when appearances do. Spring, 2014. Evan has a troubled life in the US after the death of his mother, and some trouble at his workplace gets him fired. After a heated brawl where he beats a drunken man for attacking him, Evan is also pursued by the cops and the friends of the man. In this dire situation, Evan flees to Italy to get away from all this mess, and he soon starts enjoying his new, careful life there. He even meets a girl named Louise, and he is immediately smitten by her. It starts off as a moment of physical intimacy, but he soon becomes attached to this young young lady. However, Louise has a terrifying secret, and her real identity might be far from what it seems like. Can the love between them transcend all boundaries? We will spare you the suspense and give you a tiny glimpse of the spoiler, which is basically the identity of Louise. She is an immortal creature, and she transforms into a monstrous form with tentacles. She has to retain her monstrous form in order to hold on to her immortality, and it soon becomes a choice for her, whether to become a mortal for love or strive for everlasting life. The movie is quite an atmospheric body horror flick with Lovecraftian elements, but it is also a tale of an unlikely romance. Both the lead actors are excellent in their roles, and the intelligent humor in the narrative is quite a surprise package. Overall, Spring is quite an underrated horror gem that you must check out if you ever want a taste of some good old-fashioned human-monster romance with a twist. Dracula, 1992. Based on Bram Stoker's iconic novel, this version of Count Dracula tells the story of the vampire coming to England in order to seduce Mina Murray, the beautiful wife of his young barrister. Mina has an uncanny resemblance to his late wife, and Dracula's journey brings about a reign of terror and chaos. Professor Abraham Van Helsing is the brave vampire killer who has a chance to stop the invincible Dracula, and it all boils down to a nail-biting battle between good and evil. Will love bring about Dracula's downfall, or will he be able to walk among the living for all eternity? This has to be ranked as one of the strongest adaptations of Bram Stoker's novel, and starring Gary Oldman as Count Dracula, the movie hardly puts a foot wrong. The visuals are stunning, and the ambience manages to capture the truly gothic spirit of the novel. We cannot get over the near-perfect sets, costumes, and the portrayal of Victorian England. The cast, backed by the likes of Winona Ryder and Anthony Hopkins, supports the brilliance of Gary Oldman. The movie blends both the romantic and terrifying side of things, and in this version of Dracula, he seeks to be reunited with the soul of his beloved wife instead of just looking for any random damsel to join his host of wives. His urge to find her and be together with her is probably the most sympathetic version that you will come across, but Gary Oldman nails the role as the tragic villain with a romantic side. Bite, 2015. Casey goes to celebrate her bachelorette in Costa Rica with two of her friends, Jill and Kirsten. During this trip, Casey gets bitten by a strange insect, but she doesn't pay much attention to the bite injury. She has bigger things to worry about, as she is hesitant about her upcoming wedding because her fiancé, Jared's mother, is quite an annoying old lady, and also her mother-in-law. Once Casey is back home, she experiences strange mutations in her body, which keeps getting worse. One day, she finds out insect eggs in her apartment, and when Jared's mother comes probing, Casey kills her by spitting acid. Her next victim is a friend Kirsten, who finds out about the killing, and Casey is less and less in touch with her human side as a mutated creature. Meanwhile, her other friend Jill has a thing for Jared, and she has a sinister plan to go behind her back and get her man. Will Casey's love for Jared survive her transformation, or will she simply go on a killing spree? The body horror genre runs the risk of becoming monotonous, but movies like this one prove that if done right, the narrative can still spring a few surprises. The infamous first screening of the movie had people fainting and vomiting, and soon the horror fans took notice of this hidden gem. Casey's transformation into an insect being is haunting to say the least, and her apartment somewhat turns into her hive. The movie is a bit dependent on the gooey gore element, but which body horror film isn't? The torrid love affair between a human being turning into a monster and her fiancé, who offers a few moments of jealousy when Casey gets furious about Jill's intentions. Bite certainly is not a happy ending to this love story, but it is a unique human-monster relationship nevertheless. Creature from the Black Lagoon, 1954. After the discovery of some unique skeletal remains, a group of scientists conducts an expedition along the Amazon River in search of more such remains. They head for the legendary Black Lagoon, and they find out that they have stumbled upon more than they had bargained for. They come across a strange prehistoric creature who is half man, half amphibious, and the scientists are determined to capture and bring it back to civilization for further examinations. Of course, the creature is not too keen on being being captured, and instead takes a liking to one of the scientists, Kay Lawrence. It is an all-out war between the creature and the scientist after it kidnaps Kay, and you have to watch the movie to find out the fate of this strange infatuation. The movie was made back in the day when monster flicks meant a man in a monster suit, and still, Creature from the Black Lagoon is a fun watch. The underwater photography is remarkable, and for a movie made in the early 1950s, the visuals are truly ahead of its time. Jack Arnold's direction certainly helps the cause, and this low-budget effort deserves to be revisited even today. The budding relationship between the creature and Kay is adorable to watch, even with the deadly nature of the creature. There is a scene where she swims around the lagoon in an itsy-bitsy white bathing suit, and the creature mirrors her moves in what looks like a sensual water ballet. The creature continuously stalks her throughout the movie and even gets hold of her a few times. The scientist fears the creature, but she also has a sense of the underlying compassion towards it. It was a rather incomplete human-monster love story that bordered more on the dark sexual tension between the two.
Keep you safe.
Warm Bodies, 2013. This story is premised in a post-apocalyptic world where an undead horde has taken over the population and the survivors are restricted in cities surrounded by giant walls. A human scavenger party is sent out in order to get supplies, but they come under a surprise attack from a group of zombies. One of the zombies, R, develops feelings for a young lady in the scavenger party named Julia, and he feels this overwhelming urge to protect her. As the days go by, their relationship blossoms and R seems to regain some of his humanity. However, both R and Julia are under the threat of an attack from the other undead forces or even the paranoid human forces. Can their love story materialize? The most impressive thing about Warm Bodies is the innovative concept that you will hardly encounter in the numerous zombie flicks. The idea to portray the side of life from a zombie perspective is brilliant, and the slow building romance between a member of the undead and a human is heartwarming. The narrative combines action, horror, romance and comedy, and it is a pleasant mix that ends up being thoroughly entertaining. The cast, led by Nicholas Hoult and Teresa Palmer, has done a terrific job, and there are no complaints regarding the direction or special effects either. For those who describe Warm Bodies as Twilight with zombies, this movie is too good to be compared to Twilight. Tammy and the T-Rex, 1994. If you don't like the idea of a hot and sizzling Denise Richards romancing a T-Rex, you are probably lacking imagination, and this movie will fix that for you. The story starts off with an evil scientist who implants the brain of a murdered high school student named Michael into an animatronic Tyrannosaurus. Once the Tyrannosaurus escapes, he now has Michael's brain doing the thinking, and he immediately uses this new avatar to get back at his high school bullies. He also gets a chance to be reunited with his hot girlfriend, Tammy, who doesn't take too long to the idea of cozying up to a freaking dinosaur. However, they try to stay away from the crazy scientist and the cops, and they are also looking for a new potential vessel for Michael's brain. It doesn't take much to guess that Tammy and the T-Rex is a good old-fashioned B-movie that falls under the category of films that are so bad that they are enjoyable. The director never takes it too seriously, and the narrative maintains a campy nature throughout the movie. The tongue-in-cheek humor also helps the cause, and an enthusiastic cast adds to the efforts. The likes of Denise Richards and Paul Walker are impressive in their roles, and you simply cannot help but enjoy the deliberate outrageousness and low-mindedness of this cheesy plot. You will also be rooting for the impossible relationship between an alluring young lady and a T-Rex, and there can be few better guilty pleasures than this. Fido, 2006. It is a strange world which resembles the 1950s, and the mysterious space radiation has turned the dead on Earth into zombies. However, a company named Zomcom has managed to control the zombie population, and they even have come up with a collar that can domesticate zombies. Almost every other house has such pet zombies performing menial chores, and Fido is one of them, a pet and a friend of a young boy named Timmy. This 6-foot-tall, rotting zombie develops a strange attachment with Timmy and his mother Helen, and even when his collar malfunctions, Fido can prove that even a dangerous zombie can respond to love. Fido might seem like a trashy and cheesy B-movie, but the narrative is so much more. It is a touching tale of unlikely relationships and bonding, and the comedy is so clever that you will never encounter a dull moment in the movie. Fido also has some good production values, which make the visuals quite stunning, and the actors like Carrie Ann Moss, Bill Connolly and the others do their due diligence for the roles. There are a few bloody scenes, but there is almost no gore at all, which is a rare moment for a movie with zombies. That being said, Fido is not exactly your conventional zombie flick, and it is more of a satirical narrative on how humans need just about anything to pass on the blame. If not for anything else, watch the movie for the adorable bonding between a young boy who is a social outcast and a mean-looking zombie who is actually anything but evil.
Kevin.
Edward Scissorhands, 1990. This fantasy adventure drama tells the story of an artificial man named Edward who was created by a great inventor. Unfortunately for Edward, his creator died just before he could add the finishing touch to Edward, and he never got the chance to work on his hands. Instead, Edward has metal scissors for hands and is subjected to a life of solitude. However, a kind lady named Peg discovers him and takes him into her home. As Edward warms up to the life with a family, his peace is soon interrupted when he is accused of a crime he did not commit. Meanwhile, he has also fallen for Peg's daughter, Kim, but it will take a lot to prove his innocence. This criminally underrated movie by Tim Burton should be ranked among his best works because of the pure brilliance that is evident throughout the narrative. The innovative plot gels well with a capable cast led by Johnny Depp and Winona Ryder, and their chemistry is one of the highlights of the movie. It is a romance that blossoms as the narrative moves forward, and the union of diversities is almost like a Disney fairy tale. The character of Edward is truly unique because he is capable of killing any man he wants, but all he does is trim the hedges, cut hair, and please everyone. The plight of this happy-go-lucky artificial fellow will make you root for him, and the outstanding makeup effects ensure that everything looks believable. The movie also has one of Vincent Price's last performances, and Edward Scissorhands is a masterpiece that you shouldn't miss. Lover's Vow from Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, 1990. Lover's Vow is one of the multiple stories from the iconic horror classic Tales from the Dark Side, the movie. It tells the story of Preston, who is a struggling artist living in a studio with a skylight. Through this skylight, a gargoyle checks him out, although Preston is unaware of the presence of this monster. Later, his agent calls him and tells him about the lack of customer interest in buying his artwork, and a dejected Preston drinks heavily at the bar. The bar owner walks him home, and on their way he spots the gargoyle monster and attempts to shoot the creature. However, the gargoyle kills him instead and makes Preston promise to maintain secrecy of the whole event. Soon afterwards, Preston runs into a mysterious woman named Carola, and they go on to get married and have a family. Her connections also bring Preston a lot of success, but there is a crazy twist about the identity of Carola that is about to change everything. This is one of our favorite stories in the movie, simply because of the engaging premise where a man and a gargoyle share a strange relationship. Preston eventually discovers that Carola is actually the gargoyle from the violent encounter with the bar owner, and once the secrets are revealed, his life is endangered. However, the gargoyle monster continued to love him, and the tragic ending of this horror short is not symbolic of the equation between the two. The climax actually suggests that the monster is actually sad about what she had to do, and Lover's Vow is a fun story of a human and a gargoyle getting together and having kids before the inevitable tragedy comes down on them all. Hellboy, 2004. Hellboy is the most unlikely superhero out there, spawned from a Nazi ritual at the end of World War II, where they attempt to raise the forces of hell through the Russian dark mystic Grigory Rasputin. The plan was foiled by the Allied forces, and a human demonic half-blood, Hellboy, was taken in by Professor Broom Brutenholm, who later went on to head the CIA-linked Bureau of Paranormal Research. When Rasputin is revived by his minions, it is up to Hellboy and his allies at the Bureau to set things right. The trouble is that the evil, bashing big hunk also gets caught up in a love triangle because of his feelings for Liz. Guillermo del Toro's take on Hellboy, with Ron Perlman leading the charges as the titular protagonist, remains one of the best Hellboy adaptations to date, even after all the later attempts over the years. The movie feels like a comic book coming to life, and the impressive screenplay has plenty of nods towards the source material. There is plenty of humor in the narrative, and and the CGI effects are quite impressive if you take into account the budgetary limitations of the movie. There is also an emotional side of Hellboy that has been explored, where he truly feels for Liz, and their relationship is the surprise package in the movie, because they are only friends in the comics. In fact, in Hellboy 2, we get to see them preparing for impending parenthood, and clearly their romance has blossomed further. If the most fearsome half-demon, half-human entity can fall in love, maybe there is still hope for us. Hellraiser 1987. Harry and his wife Julia move into his childhood home, and Julia soon discovers that the house is already occupied by Larry's disreputable brother Frank, who was presumed dead. He had used the supernatural puzzle box to summon other dimensional sadistic creatures called the Cenobites, and Frank lost his earthly body to their torture. After a drop of blood resurrects him, he still has a terribly deformed and monstrous physical form. He needs a series of blood sacrifices to regain his original form, and finds an unlikely companion, his brother's wife, Julia, who is also Frank's former mistress. She brings him human sacrifices until the plan is interrupted by Larry's daughter, Kirsty, who realizes what her stepmother Julia is up to. Once the Cenobites are back, no one is safe. Clive Barker's most iconic creation not only introduced the brilliance of Doug Bradley as Pinhead, the leader of the Cenobites, but it also captured the tricky trails of romance under the worst of circumstances. Julia is so blinded by her love for Frank that she completely disregards the dangers that are associated with helping him. She kills for him and ends up putting her life on the line for Frank's complete revival. Meanwhile, Frank's condition for a majority of the movie is far from a human, and this monstrous semi-dead entity and Julia's unholy romance sets the stage for an action-packed climax. The practical effects in this movie are absolute showstoppers, and this dark-themed, twisted storyline became so iconic that a successful franchise was spawned. The Untamed, 2016. Alejandra is a mother of two, and she lives in an unhappy marriage with her husband, Angel, who is secretly gay and has an affair with her brother, Fabian. This leaves Alejandra emotionally and physically frustrated, but all that changes after the arrival of Veronica, a young woman, into their lives. She met Angel at the hospital after being injured, and the reason behind Veronica's injury is as bizarre as you can imagine. She had been indulging in sexual relations with a tentacled alien creature that came from a crashed meteor, and one time the creature suddenly bites her in the abdomen. Meanwhile, Angel gets arrested after Fabian is found beaten into a coma following his refusal to Angel's advances, and Alejandra now begins visiting the creature and establishes a regular physical relationship. What will be the fate of this unlikely relationship, and how will Alejandra's life shape up following the weirdest affair? This Mexican horror flick is not for the faint of heart, and you have to be prepared for some disturbing alien-human sexuality, which is almost the core of the story. However, you would be wrong to dismiss this movie as a disgusting and unnecessary tactic to woo the fans. In fact, the deeply disturbing narrative has an underlying take on the hypocrisy of the society, and the director has done a brilliant job of putting things into the story subtly. The acting performances are terrific, and the creature idea is simply too good. This tentacled alien monster can bring both pleasure and destruction, and its association with Alejandra changes her life completely. This unique movie is a must-watch, and you may get to learn more about human relationships than your average rom-com. The Beast, 1975. This French erotic horror flick tells the story of a young woman named Lucy who agrees to marry after her father's death in order to inherit some property. She travels to her would-be husband's crumbling estate with her aunt. This estate is situated deep within the woods, and the forests were once haunted by a terrifying beast that preyed upon unprotected virgins. What Lucy doesn't know is that the monstrous creature is still lurking around the region, and she is soon targeted by the beast. She has a series of vivid, gruesome nightmares and hallucinations, but it soon turns out that there is some truth in her visions. Will she be able to escape the clutches of this sex-crazed monster? This movie is a lustful fantasy tale that has some morbid moments that you have to sit through. The narrative is grotesque at times, and the constant theme of eroticism is prevalent throughout the film. It captures the daring subject matter and deals with a taboo subject without pretension. The relationship between Lucy and the monster can hardly be put into words. There are a few disturbingly visually shocking sex sequences, but they are actually an integral part of the storytelling. The raw honesty and contemptuous sentiment towards the ruling class makes this movie so unique, and it is also hilariously entertaining, so make sure you check it out. Mutants, 2009. This movie explores another zombie outbreak premise, but adds a twist that makes things interesting for the viewers. Here, a strange virus has transformed the majority of the population into bloodthirsty zombie-like mutants, and Marco and Sonia are a young couple desperately trying to find their way to a military base for safety. However, in the course of the journey, Marco gets infected himself during an attack, and to make matters worse, Sonia is pregnant. Now she must find a way to protect herself and her unborn child from the man she loves. Marco slowly starts to transform into the monstrous form that they have been running from, and you have to watch the movie to find out if Sonia manages to survive. We all love ourselves a slice of well-made apocalyptic suspense thrillers, and Mutants surely fits the bill with its innovative storytelling. The narrative is claustrophobic, bloody, and filled with moments that will have you bite your fingernails off. You will also find similarities with The Shining in terms of how Sonia has to be wary of her own husband as a threat. She still has the love for Marco, but with him transforming into a mutant, her love is now contaminated by fear. This French horror flick is more psychological than the visual impacts of violence, gore, and shock, and the impressive acting performances from the lead actors surely help the cause. If you are up for a different spin on the traditional zombie flick, make sure to add Mutants to your watch list. Splice, 2009. Clive and Elsa are successful genetic engineers who splice animal DNA and create hybrid creatures for medical use. While they work for a large company, they secretly create a revolutionary human-animal hybrid and come up with a strange female creature. This prepubescent creature ages faster than humans, but the mental development is a lot slower, and the couple names it Dren. However, Dren soon starts showing dangerous adaptations and tendencies, and later she even uses her pheromones to seduce Clive. But the true horrors of Dren and the real extent of the dangerous creature are yet to come to the fore. The story might seem a tad bit ridiculous, but remind yourself that you are enjoying a piece of sci-fi horror and logic often takes a backseat here. This creature feature is more determined to play on the underlying theme of the side effects of playing God by the two unethical genetic scientists. The engaging plot is supported by some awesome special effects and makeup, and the transformation of the stunning French actress Delphine Chanayak into the deadly creature is remarkable. We also have to spare a word for the brilliant acting performances from Adrian Brody and Sarah Polley. The creature designs were simply fascinating, and the special effects designers reportedly created 11 different versions of Dren for the movie. This artificially designed humanoid creature is quite alluring, and her vicious physical urges are shocking and almost the turning point in the story. In short, Splice happens to be a twisted but highly enjoyable creature horror drama that will leave you satisfied and entertained. Teeth, 2007. Dawn is a young lady who grew up near a nuclear power plant with a dysfunctional family. She lived with a strange stepbrother and stepfather and a mother who was also sick. Later, once she is in high school, she takes a chastity pledge and decides to refrain from any form of physical intimacy before marriage. However, she likes a guy named Toby, and he might not be up for the patiently waiting game. When he tries to forcibly be physical with her, there are deadly consequences, and Dawn finds out that her body has a mysterious hidden curse or adaptation. Ryan is one of her admirers, and when it's trouble all around, she turns to him for help. Only a heroic heart can potentially save her from the curse. This independent horror flick came as a surprise for many because the cast did not have a single familiar face, and the viewers expected this to be a kick-ass slasher movie. The story takes into account one of the most prevalent myths involving vagina dentata, which is basically deadly teeth in the private parts of a woman with a mind of their own. Combining this with a young lady who vowed to save herself for marriage is hilarious and surreal at the same time. The dark humor in the narrative is fantastic, and the movie certainly has one of the craziest human-monster physical romances in some of the most shocking ways possible. Treat The Swan like a horror comedy or like a well-made satire. The bottom line is that you are going to have loads of fun. Cold Skin, 2017. The story is set in the aftermath of Franz Ferdinand's death, which eventually brought the First World War. A nameless man is dropped off on the edge of the Antarctic Circle on a remote island, almost on the end of the Earth. He will have to be there for an entire year, and wait for his replacement to relieve him of his duties, and he would serve as the weather observer there. Within a few days, the man learns, with a little help from the lighthouse keeper on the island, Gruner, that there are some deadly sea humanoid creatures lurking around the island. The two men must fight against hordes of these creatures, but the man will soon learn a few more secrets about Gruner and the creatures. One of the female creatures has been kept by Gruner to serve as an occasional lover, and there are consequences to everything. It might not be your typical big-budget Hollywood action horror masterpiece, but this artistic piece, directed by a Frenchman, Xavier Gens, will leave you impressed. Goldskin is a perfect adaptation of the award-winning novel by Albert Sanchez Pinon, and the actors performed brilliantly to add a believable touch to the narrative. The concept is remarkable, and although this is essentially a creature feature, the unexplained element is the additional surprise for the viewers. The CGI looks quite natural, and the relationship between the marine humanoid creature and a human becomes one of the turning points in the narrative. If you are up for experimenting with a deserving project, you need to check out this movie. Bride of Frankenstein, 1935. This is the perfect sequel to Frankenstein, 1931, when we first learned about Frankenstein's monster. As it turns out, both Dr. Harvey Frankenstein and the monster are alive, contrary to what most people believe. Meanwhile, a former disgraced colleague named Dr. Pretorius pays Henry a visit, and he blackmails Dr. Frankenstein to help him in his new project, where he wants to create life using both their methods. Dr. Pretorius always had different methods, with some yielding disappointing results, and this time around he wants to create a woman who can procreate with Frankenstein's monster and form a new life form. But what happens when this unpredictable creature gets a taste of the real world and a bride? For a movie made in the 1930s, Bride of Frankenstein is extravagantly produced, and the imaginative sets and cinematography are certainly ahead of their time. The faced narrative and the haunting background score creates an unforgettable experience, and the acting performances are equally magnificent. It is truly worth a sequel, and you will discover a side of Frankenstein's monster that you did not know before. While you are enjoying his human side, there are also some terrifying moments, such as the monster trying to court his bride in the climactic moments. Their relationship is one of the highlights of the story, and we recommend watching both Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein for some nostalgic throwback. Meatball Machine, 2005. This Japanese tokusatsu horror flick is focused around a young factory worker named Yoji, who falls in love with one of his co-workers named Sachiko. Yoji is shy and unable to express his feelings, and he is often roughed up in the streets and at work. One day, when a fellow worker tries to sexually attack Sachiko, Yoji tries to come to her rescue, but he gets badly beaten and bruised. Meanwhile, Sachiko feels sorry for the poor guy, and as they head to their apartment, Sachiko is attacked and taken over by an alien object. It is revealed that alien parasites have taken over human bodies to use their flesh as fighting machines, and now Yoji and Sachiko must find a way to get rid of this strange condition that turns Sachiko into a deadly biomechanical monster. Will their love story have a happy ending? This is actually a remake of the 1999 version of the movie that went by the same name, but this version is the one that got all the recognition and critical acclaim. The movie is an absolute splatterfest, and blood and guts are plentiful. The creature effects will remind you of John Carpenter's The Thing, and the non-stop carnage offers pure entertainment throughout the movie. The love affair between a shy, timid guy and a woman infected by deadly alien parasites is a memorable one, and things get so interesting that you won't care about the below-par CGI effects. If you have the stomach to watch this cheerful massacre and bizarre romance, Meatball Machine is just the right pick for horror nights. Splash, 1984. There is something about a human falling in love with a mythical mermaid creature that constantly becomes a subject for horror and romance dramas. Splash is another such attempt by Ron Howard, and the veteran filmmaker tells the story of a young man named Alan Burr, who was rescued from drowning as a young boy by a mermaid. The mermaid, named Madison, eventually finds Alan in New York City, and meanwhile, she has grown legs instead of a tail. Alan falls head over heels in love with her, and he is yet to find out about her secret identity. But there will be trouble if her feet get wet, and we also have to see how Alan reacts after learning about Madison's mermaid identity. A love story without a few challenges is never entertaining enough, and Splash ensures that there is no shortage of drama and twists in the narrative. The romance brewing between a human and a mermaid is heartwarming to witness, and the soulful music is perfectly delightful. The funny script offers a few genuine laughs alongside the emotional and sensitive moments, and what takes the movie to the next level is the mesmerizing performance from Tom Hanks in the lead role. Daryl Hannah is gorgeous as Madison, and their chemistry is absolutely adorable. Don't miss out on this classic 80s romantic comedy with a twist, because there aren't many like this one.
Don't look down.
Shrek, I'm looking down.
Spells romance. It's no way to behave.
Shrek, 2001. An ugly green ogre named Shrek lived in a swamp, and his perfect life in solitude is suddenly hampered when his swamp sees the arrival of several annoying fairy tale creatures. It is soon revealed that these fairy tale creatures were actually banished from their kingdom by the evil Lord Farquaad. In order to get his regular life back, Shrek sets off with his donkey to strike a deal with Farquaad. The scheming lord sends Shrek off to rescue Princess Fiona from a tower that is guarded by fire-breathing dragons. The ogre accomplishes the task, but there is a slight problem. He realizes that he has started to fall in love with the princess. There are bigger surprises awaiting him because the princess also has a deep, dark secret that is about to be unraveled. Yes, there is nothing truly terrifying about this movie, but we simply cannot keep this cinematic brilliance aside while discussing about the best human-monster love stories out there. The computer animation was truly groundbreaking back in the day, and the plot was far more adult than you would think. Some outstanding voice actors like Mike Myers, Cameron Diaz, John Lithgow, and Eddie Murphy add to the gravity of the characters, and the humor is hard to miss throughout the movie. With a perfect combination of comedy and emotions, Shrek also leaves you amazed by the unlikely romance between an ogre and a princess. You simply cannot look beyond this timeless masterpiece because there are few better human-monster love stories out there. Let the Right One In, 2008. Set in the suburb of Blackeberg in Stockholm in 1982, Let the Right One In tells the story of a bullied 12-year-old boy named Oscar. He falls for a mysterious girl named Ely, who seems to be averse to the sun and cannot consume regular food. One really needs to persuade her to come out of her room, but Oscar, being the lonely outcast, is immediately drawn to her. He meets Ellie in the playground of their building at night, and she gives him the strength and motivation to fight back against his bullies. However, there is a terrifying secret surrounding Ellie. She requires a constant supply of blood from humans in order to survive, and her father is a serial killer who hunts down people for Ellie to feed on. How much can Oscar's love deal with, and what will happen to his budding romance? You will rarely come across movies that are both terrifying and tender, and Let the Right One In is a perfect mix of the two. It is an absolute work of art and a wonderful adaptation of a best-selling book in the capable hands of the director Thomas Alfredson. This dark and gory horror fantasy captures the innocence of Oscar and throws in a few terrifying secrets to shake you up. It is a twisted tale of revenge, but it also is an adorable love story between a helpless young boy and his monstrous lady love. We must take some time to appreciate the performances by Lena Leandersson and Kara Handelbrandt as the lead roles. And if you're up for some experimentation, this is a movie that will not disappoint you. Possession, 1981. Mark believed that he was in a happy marriage with his wife Anna, but a business trip makes him aware of something brewing underneath. Anna is growing restless, and when she wants a divorce, Mark's whole world falls apart. He is determined to find out the reason behind her sudden change, and he finds out about Anna's secret lover Heinrich. Mark and Anna had a son named Bob, and Bob's teacher happens to look just like Anna. Slowly, Mark falls for Helen, and this also distracts him from the pain of his divorce. However, he still cannot leave his past life behind and hires a private detective firm to find out the truth about Anna's love life. What he finds is truly terrifying and far more sinister than infidelity. Possession is easily one of the most shocking horror flicks that you will come across, and the surprising moments are concealed within the sudden revelations that come throughout the movie. The disturbing behavior of Anna and the actual reason behind it is something that you will not really come across in mainstream movies. The narrative is compelling and complex, and you see a dysfunctional family fall apart bit by bit. The cinematography is unforgettable, and you will surely never get over the plot twist at the end. Isabella Gianni is truly remarkable as the psychotic woman, and Sam Neill is equally convincing as her confused husband. There are a few disturbing scenes, such as Anna cozying up to a morbid monster and Mark being intimate with a psychotic Anna, and we only recommend this movie for a mature audience. Honeymoon 2014. Paul and Bea are a newlywed couple and they head for a remote honeymoon location in the Lake Country. However, what was supposed to be a romantic getaway soon turns into a nightmare. They head to a rustic restaurant for lunch and Bea meets her childhood friend Will, who seems rather weird. Later, Bea wanders off into the middle of the night and when Paul finds her, she seems to be in a disoriented state. She claims to be a sleepwalker, but there seems to be something more about her new avatar. Is she the same person who came for the honeymoon with Paul? Is it all related to their strange meeting with Bea's childhood friend Will at the local restaurant? Honeymoon is quite suspenseful and engrossing, and there is not a single dull moment across the narrative. The movie is carried by the brilliance of the lead actors, and both Rose Leslie and Harry Treadaway are excellent in their roles and have a great chemistry. The setting is quite atmospheric and the mystery is unraveled at a brisk pace. The direction is slick and the innovative camera work captures a lot of beautiful shots. Watch out for Bea's stint with the otherworldly forces, which is what gets this movie into this list in the first place. The moral of the story: never go for an isolated retreat to a place you don't know so well.
Who is that?
Candyman 1992. Candyman tells the story of Helen Lyle, a young student who is intrigued by some of the prevalent local myths and legends. She learns about the legend of the Candyman, who is a one-armed man appearing every time his name is uttered 5 times in front of a mirror. The locals take this very seriously, but Helen is reluctant to buy into such an irrational story. This is until she is forced to think otherwise after a series of violent murders. The locals blame Candyman for the slaughter, and there might be some truth to their account. Candyman is a legendary horror movie icon with one of the most tragic backstories. He was the son of a slave, but his father became rich after inventing a device that could mass-produce shoes. He was reportedly killed by a group of men for having an affair with the daughter of a powerful man. A major reveal in the movie comes when Helen realizes that she looks just like his previous love interest. It is a bizarre chemistry where Candyman seems to be in love with her but also wants to kill her. The movie is slightly spooky, but it went relatively unnoticed back in the day because people perceived this to be rather silly. Tony Todd is the perfect fit as the titular Candyman, and the supporting cast, led by the likes of Bernard Rose and Virginia Madsen, is also quite impressive. Overall, this misunderstood and underrated project can be a solid entertainer and deserves to be on your watch list.
Hey, Beth. Are you okay?
Life After Beth 2014. How long-lasting can love be? Can someone love his partner even if she is back from the dead? Life After Beth explores this strange premise as it tells the story of a young man named Zach. His girlfriend, Beth, died from a fatal snake bite during a hike through the woods, and Zach is heartbroken by the tragedy. He tries to be friends with her parents, but they seem to be trying to stay away from him. Eventually, Zach discovers that his girlfriend is back from the dead in a zombie form, and her parents are trying to maintain secrecy around her resurrection. Initially, it is all fun and games, as Zach gets to do everything with her that he couldn't do before, but slowly, her behavior becomes concerning. There are strange occurrences around the town, and it might be related to Zach's undead girlfriend. This quirky and offbeat movie will make sure that you have a few laughs along the way. It is definitely an innovative take on the zombie genre, and Life After Beth might be a great way to try out your first zombie flick. Although there is a constant layer of comedy surrounding the narrative, the storytelling is mostly done seriously, and the acting performances complement the theme of the movie. We loved watching the strange romance between Zach and his zombie girlfriend, and even his apprehension and dilemma add to the fun of things. This is not some classic, and watch it only if you are okay with some guilty pleasure.
I ask you to be mine.
Corpse Bride 2005. You know you're in for something special when Tim Burton is associated with the project, and he does not disappoint as the co-director of Corpse Bride. This animated dark fantasy musical tells the story of a shy groom who decides to practice his wedding vows in the woods. Unknowingly, he puts the ring in the hands of a corpse, and before he realizes what happened, he is transported into the land of the dead and has a corpse bride. He is desperate to return to the living fiancé in the land of the living, living, but the love triangle thickens because his corpse bride just wouldn't let go. This is a perfect movie about love and kindness, and Johnny Depp being the voice of the lead character is perhaps the best thing about it. The characters are wonderful and vibrant, and so is the animation quality. The young man named Victor and his confusion as he comes to terms with the turn of events is hilarious. He is terrified and clueless, and his corpse bride is actually far from the scary thing you might imagine. We don't want to give away the climax, but be assured of a real tearjerker that can trigger the most non-emotional fellows out there. If you don't have a corpse bride type of romance in your life, you probably don't have any at all. The Phantom of the Opera 2004. If we had to count every time love turned violent, we would run out of fingers very quickly. The Phantom of the Opera captures the aggression that is often associated with obsessive love, as an opera ghost falls for a young lady who is one of the chorus girls. He tutors her and turns her into the lead singer and scares off anyone who tries to take away her limelight. However, things turn south when the young lady falls in love with someone else. The Phantom is obsessed with his young student and he kidnaps her to be his eternal bride. Can the young lady's human lover rescue her from this perilous situation? The movie is truly stunning and magnificent, a visual delight that you will not forget anytime soon. Everything from the engaging narrative to the wonderful performances is worth cherishing even after almost 2 decades. The cinematography is beautiful and the opera moments are well documented, and Gerard Butler steals the show as the Phantom. There are a couple of steamy moments and the sensual element is actually captured quite artistically. You will actually feel bad for the plight of the Phantom, even though some of his actions are undeniably questionable. But then again, the best human monster love stories are the ones that leave you conflicted, aren't they? King Kong 1933. This iconic movie did have several versions, but the original one is still our favorite. It starts off with a successful filmmaker, Carl Denham, who has fallen on hard times, and he makes one last attempt to shoot a movie on an unknown island. He sets sail with his crew and starlet Anne Darrow, who would star as the leading lady. But they have unwelcome surprises waiting for them. The island is home to a gigantic gorilla among many other threats, and this prehistoric beast takes a liking to Anne and protects her from all the dangers. However, this gorilla, which everyone names Kong, is captured and brought to New York to be part of the showbiz. Things take a destructive turn when the gigantic ape escapes and causes mayhem across the city. There is a reason behind King Kong still remaining so relevant and popular after all these years. The movie manages to capture the soft spot of the audience by presenting a terrifying creature that is both intimidating and likable at the same time. The effects are brilliant for the times, and the leading actress, Fay Wray, makes you believe that even the most terrifying beast on the planet can fall in love with her. The unrequited love that Kong had for Anne Darrow is hard to ignore, and it remains one of the most tragic cinematic climaxes of all time. Kong was clearly smitten by Anne, and his liking for the blonde was also symbolic of his innocence. The mighty beast had a soft spot, and humanity rejected him just like his crush on the pretty blonde could never materialize. Of course, there was never going to be a positive outcome for Kong in this unlikely romance, but the least that Anne could have done was to convince everyone to spare Kong's life. You might say she tried, but we cannot look away from the fact that she didn't try hard enough. The Swamp Thing 1982. There is a top-secret bioengineering project in the swampy lands, and a scientist gets killed under mysterious circumstances while working there. Alice is sent as his replacement, and she discovers that one of the swamp sensors has malfunctioned and the scientist died while trying to repair it. Meanwhile, Dr. Alec Holland, the lead scientist in the project, takes her to appreciate the beauty of the swamps. However, things take a sinister turn after a scientist is actually transformed into a swamp plant monster under the effects of a special chemical. Wes Craven as a director needs no introduction, and the Swamp Thing is just another feather on his cap. It is a beautifully captured movie, and the Swamp Thing monster looks campy but entertaining. Adrienne Barbeau is stunning as ever, and other members of the cast, such as Louis Jourdan and Ray Wise, are quite adequate in their roles. The monster is actually a sympathetic protagonist, and his lonely plight and emotions are sure to leave you moved. It might not be the perfect comic book adaptation, but you wouldn't be complaining with all the entertainment on offer. The The Lure, 2015. The romance between mermaids and humans has been captured time and again, and The Lure brings you to yet another story of this strange interspecies union. The story is premised in Warsaw, and it revolves around a pair of mermaid sisters, Silver and Golden. They come across a family of musicians, and after assuring them that they mean no harm, the sisters are taken to a dance club for cabaret performances. However, Golden is unable to escape her bloodthirsty nature, and when her sister falls in love with a blonde bassist named Nitek, Golden is worried about their new life. With conflicting interests, what will eventually become of the bonhomie between the two? The movie is quite enjoyable, and one of the more aesthetically pleasing films that you will come across. There are elements of horror, but the focus remains largely on the dark, erotic theme of the story. This Polish flick has surprisingly good effects, and a rather simple plot gets a shocking twist because of how the conventional mermaid story has been reimagined. The music is quite catchy, but the fact that it turns out to be like a musical can be off-putting for some horror fans. That being said, we can strongly vouch for The Lure as a weird yet entertaining horror flick that goes perfectly with a couple of beers. The Host, 2006. This Korean horror flick tells the story of a man in his late 60s, Park, who runs a snack bar on the banks of the Han River. He lives with his 2 sons, a daughter and a granddaughter, and the family has a peaceful life until one day everything falls apart. A strange monster emerges from the river and creates large-scale panic and death. It also takes away Park's granddaughter, Hyun-seo, and the family is in shock following this sudden tragedy. However, they soon find out that the young lady is still alive, and they resolve to save her by any means possible. The Host is a crazy horror comedy wrapped under layers of socio-political commentary. It is an intelligent film that starts with a bang and never quite dulls down. The fast-paced narrative and the interesting storyline will keep you glued to your seats, and you are bound to be amazed by the strange connection between the creature and the young lady. The director ensures that the narrative never gets too serious, and the smart mix of humor always keeps things fun for the viewer. If you are in for a joyful and frightening ride with a hint of emotions, The Host will leave you pleasantly surprised. The Mermaid, 2016. The Mermaids have not just entertained Western and European fiction, they have also made a place for themselves in Asian fantasy. This Chinese movie delves into the dilemma faced by a mermaid named Shan, who is sent to assassinate a businessman named Zhuan, who is a threat to the ecosystem of her kind. However, she messes up the mission after she realizes that she has fallen in love with the one that she was supposed to kill. Can they together find a sustainable solution for the problems of Shan and her species? For almost an entire year, The Mermaid remained one of the highest grossing films in China, and it totally deserves the praise associated with the movie. It is essentially a comedy, but the heartfelt storytelling is something that brings the whole family together. It tells a special story and quietly imparts a few valuable lessons about the importance of preserving the ecosystem. The dubbing is probably not the best in the business, but apart from that, the movie hardly puts a foot wrong. The developing relationship between Shan and Zhuan is great to watch, and you will be rooting for a happy ending the whole time. If you are up for a modern Chinese fairy tale, we suggest that you give this movie a try. Do let us know in the comments below about the relationships that impressed you the most in this list. And don't forget to tell us about your favorite human-monster love story in this oddly intriguing genre of monster romance.
I ask you to be mine.